Good afternoon. Today, I speak to you from a capital where our Kentucky and our American flags fly at half-staff in honor and in mourning for D.C. Capitol Police officers Brian Signet and Howard Liebengood, who passed away after defending the U.S. Capitol from a terrorist attack, a domestic terrorist attack. This should be a stark reminder of the cost of fanning the flames of anger, of hate, of bigotry, and intolerance, and what happens when you repeatedly give people false information. The condemnations of these types of actions must be unequivocal and not just one day only, because the threat is still here. On Saturday, self-proclaimed militia groups gathered at this Capitol just 3 days after the domestic terror attack on the U.S. Capitol. They were clear in what they thought and believed, taking a moment of silence for one of the domestic terrorists who broke into the U.S. Capitol building, who died that day and even took a lap in her honor around our Capitol. That's right, honoring someone that attacked our country. And they came prepared. See, one of the things that's been pointed out as showing this domestic terror attack in our U.S. Capitol, one of the ways that we absolutely know what some individuals intended to do in terms of kidnapping and or harming elected officials were the zip ties that one of those individuals carried in the D.C. Capitol that day. This is a picture from the, we'll call it, rally of the so-called militia here in Kentucky. I believe when asked, he said, just in case. These are not the actions of people who believe in this country and in the rule of law. It's people who believe they can take the law into their own hands and bully and intimidate other individuals. We here in Kentucky will not be bullied. Condemnations need to continue every time something like this happens, because they spread and because people end up listening to this or to others who would fan the flames and do other things to bully, intimidate other individuals. Just one day after this rally yesterday, someone vandalized our own Dr. Stack's home, spray painting COVID is PCR fraud on his mailbox. This wasn't about what was spray painted on the mailbox. This is about those individuals, those bullies, trying to create terror by saying, we know where you live and we know how to get to you. But we will not let that happen. As our top public health official, Dr. Stack has stood strong in our fight against the coronavirus because of his work. Thousands of people are alive today that wouldn't be. And whether you agree or disagree with the steps that ultimately I made the calls on, trying to create fear in his family is the lowest form of low. So to the cowards out there that did it, we're working to find you. It is not acceptable. This is not how we act in our society and in a democracy. And to anybody who believes that domestic terror is the way to go, we'll be ready for you. We will not back down. And to those that in their elected positions will use the words of hate or anger and will try to stir it up, stop. Stop. Stop trying to claim elections are rigged. Stop trying to claim that individuals were not elected either this election or a year ago. Stop it. We owe a duty to our jobs. We owe duties to the oaths that we have taken to never fan the flames that spur these individuals, and they are listening. We have a responsibility in everything that we do. So today I want to thank the real patriots, those that stand up to intimidation and to bullying, that don't let these things like that vandalism stop them from doing the right things. We've seen this type of action and activity all over the country. I mean, it was just 6 months or so ago that they went past all the impediments in front of the governor's mansion and fully armed walked right up on the porch, the house that my family lives in. I know what a lot of individuals would think about people walking up on their porch, and tried to harass and demand I come outside. I wasn't even there. But to even interact with or suggest that this is okay, Right now, we have a duty, an absolute duty, to restore the soul of our democracy. And there can be no place for what we saw on Saturday, for that attack we saw on Wednesday, for these types of bullying and anger tactics. No place. I believe in America. And I know everybody else out there does too. Condemnation. It is never okay. You need, and I need you, to be very clear in making sure that this never happens again, because there is zero support for those that would engage in this type of activity. All right. I want to move on to a very different topic and in a very different tone. We've seen some bills move through the General Assembly that attempt to, I guess, create new ways of addressing the coronavirus. One bill that passed attempted to put CDC guidelines into law as the law that could be enforced, and the standards that would be used. Now, today I received a letter from Robert R. Redfield, Dr. Redfield, the director of the CDC. If we could put that up. Dr. Redfield says the following: "It's come to my attention that there is concern regarding the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Mitigation guidance. I want to make it clear the CDC guidance should not be interpreted as regulation. Rather, they are meant as recommendations. It should be used in consideration for specific state and/or local regulations, but this guidance is meant to be flexible and adaptable." Here's the important part. "It is not meant to be prescriptive or interpreted as standards that can be regulated." This is the CDC saying that their guidelines should not be written into law, as is done or as was done on House Bill 1. And in fact, it appears that earlier in this pandemic, there were some other areas that tried to do something similar, and the CDC put out very specific guidance after that was done on what that specific area should be doing. So again, that is the response to that legislation from the CDC itself. But I do want to talk a little bit about the CDC, because in putting it in one of these bills, I think it was recognized as foremost experts that we ought to rely on. So a number of areas that our administration has been questioned on, that the CDC, I guess, is the foremost experts recognized, at least in the bills that were passed, has a couple statements about things that I think are informative and can hopefully put some arguments to rest. Let's go to the first one. Their statements on restaurants and bars. As you all know, we've had to put restrictions in place, and we know they've hurt those businesses, but absolutely necessary to stop various waves of COVID-19, and it's worked every time we've done it. There's been questions on whether it spreads in those types of facilities. So this is from the CDC, again, from guidelines that at least under House Bill 1, if it goes into law, would become a part of law. So they say this: visiting bars and restaurants can increase your risk of getting and spreading COVID-19. And then they provide evidence. In a recent study, scientists found that adults with positive COVID-19 test results were twice as likely to have reported dining at restaurants than those with negative COVID-19 test results. And they even go on to talk about the why, and I thought it would be informative for everybody to see. And these are those just very common things that we know. We know how the virus spreads, and so any area that engages in the type of activity that can spread the virus is unfortunately a place we got to be very careful with. That's not us as an administration picking on anybody. It's where the virus spreads. And so these are the reasons that the CDC has found and in looking at their evidence from their study. First, that people from different households gather in the same space. And then to eat or drink, you have to remove your mask. That is the preventative measure to keep it from spreading or to keep yourself from getting it. Ventilation flow, the way that it works indoors can further spread the virus. Physical distancing, very difficult in restaurants and bars. And you got to talk loud for people to hear you, which causes an increase in droplets. And then the last one, the use of alcohol may alter judgment and make it a little bit harder to follow all of those practices. So that's not this administration, that's the CDC, the foremost experts that were listed in House Bill 1 as their guidelines ought to be the legal standards. Here's another one. I know that some have questioned whether there is evidence that COVID-19 spreads in gyms. So this is their very explicit statement. COVID-19 has been shown to spread at gyms, fitness classes, and studios. Finally, on schools, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, the CDC guidance specifically talks about if we want schools to be open and open safely, the locality and the state have to be able to take action to reduce community spread, because if community spread is high enough, it can and it will get into those school buildings. And that requires us to not only have the right type of standards in place in schools, but also the surrounding community. In other words, if we don't have the authority and the flexibility to reduce cases of COVID-19 in a community, we can't make schools safe, which is what we all want to do. Takeaways are the director of the CDC, that's the guy who runs it, says these shouldn't be written into law. They're not written that way, and it won't work. But number two is, if indeed by putting it in that law, we've got the legislative branch of government saying they're the experts, there are the pieces that at times we've been questioned about, and hopefully that will resolve those issues, and we won't be arguing about something now that is absolute fact, and that's almost expert testimony from their expert about what the facts are. All right, last week was the highest week ever that we have had in this pandemic, with 26,799 cases. Let's show the stair-stepper chart. We believe that what this shows is the impact of holiday gatherings. We can see in the numbers and what was happening with our positivity rate before that the steps we took to stop the third wave indeed did blunt it, and in fact had our cases going down. But holiday gatherings appear to have significantly increased the spread of the coronavirus. And we also have Dr. Deborah Birx suggesting, and now we're hearing about it in a number of from different experts, that we believe that either the UK COVID mutation or another has hit the United States maybe as early as October, that more aggressively spreads the virus. And in fact, I think I read today that Indiana just identified its first case of this more aggressively spreading mutation of the coronavirus. We have not identified it here in Kentucky, but certainly I would, at this point, the numbers as we've seen it, at least the last 2 weeks, it could be what is happening here. Now, when we get to today's report, still high, but it is less than the number of cases we had last week. If that's the case, I think it's more evidence that the bump is not the bump we're seeing is from holiday gatherings and not just a continuation of that third wave. That again, I think the data shows that we stopped, but it's fragile. Every time we let our guards down, COVID finds a way we increase cases and people die. That's why we cannot let our guard down. Of just as much concern as the number of cases that we saw this week is the positivity rate. Let's put that up. Isn't that startling? You got to go back to May the 3rd for a higher positivity rate than we have right now. And in fact, if you go back to April 12th, this is the second highest positivity rate of any month during this pandemic. Now is when it is at its most serious and where we will lose the most people if we are not incredibly careful. And we still, if we do the right things, can stop this. We are not at capacity in our healthcare system, though again, that could happen pretty quickly. This ought to be another wake-up call. It ought to be a bright red warning light. It tells us that we all got to protect ourselves. We got to wear those masks. We got to do everything almost perfectly under the guidance and the state rules to ensure that this thing doesn't get any further out of hand. Speaking of that hospital capacity, we update that every Monday. This week we have 3 areas in the red. That is with either inpatient beds, ICU beds, or ventilators over 80%. What you see here is in Eastern Kentucky, we have our ICU beds at 80.9%. The region 10 is really concerning because those ICU beds are at about 91.1, and region 4, 87% on ICU beds. As you can see, this is, I mean, it's concerning where some of these numbers are, but we still have room, especially if we use the other ICU beds in other regions. So we've got time, but it's got to have urgency before we end up in a situation like we're seeing in California, and we're starting to see in other places where in Los Angeles County, they are not even putting somebody in an ambulance to take them to the hospital if they don't think they're going to make it because they don't have a bed to put them in when they get there. I don't know if any of us out there can imagine that because we've never seen it, but it should be of great concern for all of us. Today's COVID report, 2,085 new cases of COVID-19. Our positivity rate, 12.35%, is down just a little bit from yesterday, but we have 119 red counties. That means that this virus is everywhere. New cases by county: Jefferson, 358, Fayette, 183, Kenton, 79, Boone, 77, Madison, Morgan, and Warren, all at 68. I believe Morgan has the highest incident rate in the state right now. Henderson, 58, Bullitt, 57, Campbell, 47, Graves, 46, Boyd, 35, Boyle, 31, and the rest can be found at kycovid19.ky.gov. Hospitalizations, ICU, and ventilators, all relatively flat, which is a good thing, and in fact down a little bit from last week. So that says while we're in a dangerous place, we can, by modeling the type of good behaviors and not getting together again, like many apparently did over the holidays, that we can ensure that there's the healthcare resources to ultimately help those that are sick. So 1,709 hospitalized, 381 in the ICU, 207 on a ventilator. Now, sometimes those numbers are a little low on Monday, and we get a better update on Tuesday. We continue to see higher death totals today with 21 new deaths. They include, and today, 16 of the 21, the individuals were not in long-term care. So anyone who feels a false sense of security by the really tragic numbers and percentages of our deaths dealing with long-term care, this could reflect a change, but certainly says just because you're not in long-term care doesn't mean you're not at risk. So a 76-year-old man from Adair, a 67-year-old woman from Allen, a 71-year-old woman from Allen, a 73-year-old woman from Boone, an 81-year-old man from Christian, an 81-year-old man from Cumberland, a 76-year-old man from Fleming, an 88-year-old woman, and an 82-year-old man from Graves. a 68-year-old woman, and an 87-year-old woman from Hardin County, 86-year-old man from Hopkins, 88-year-old man from Meade, 3 individuals from Nelson. They're all men ages 57, 68, and 69. 3 individuals from Pulaski, an 86-year-old woman and a 74 and 78-year-old man, 83-year-old man from Russell, and a 68-year-old woman from Taylor. A lot of individuals in their 60s today. On Mondays, we're going to start just providing to the public what you can already find on kycovid19.ky.gov, and that's the self-reports from schools from the week before. So this last week, only a few school districts started back in person, with the majority of them considering whether they're going to do it this week. So last week, schools reported 1,674 students had tested positive in that week for COVID-19. 1,062 of their staff members had tested positive for COVID-19. 3,212 students entered quarantine over last week, and 774 staff members entered quarantine last week. Now on the dashboard, and this is really important for parents trying to make an informed decision about whether their kids go in person or not. You can look at your school district. You can look at your specific school. And thank you to the schools that are self-reporting and are doing so regularly. That, again, gives parents and others information that they need. Sadly, today, there is one new COVID case in a veteran at Carl M. Beshear Radcliffe Veterans Center. And I believe that we have lost another veteran from that facility. Vaccinations at the clinics are complete, started, or scheduled for all 4 veterans centers. And today we've got a tough memorial, one that family had asked us to wait on until after the funeral service. So today we mourn the loss of another educator in Kentucky. Simone Parker was only 46 years old when she passed away from COVID earlier this month. She taught for 19 years at Trigg County High School in Cadiz and was described by everyone who knew her as an extraordinary educator. She always said, "Once they're mine, they're always mine," about her students. And that was true. She was often found taking care of her kids in and out of the classroom, doing whatever was needed to help them succeed. Her husband, William Parker, shared that once you met Simone, you were considered family to her. She never met a stranger. William and Simone were set to celebrate 24 years of marriage later this year before he, Simone, and her sister who lives with them all tested positive for COVID. Unfortunately, it hit Simone harder, and the Monday before Christmas, she had to be taken to the hospital. During that time, she was intubated, sedated, and couldn't speak. Her husband said the hardest part was not being able to truly say goodbye to his wife of 23 years. Today, we lift up William and the rest of Simone's family in prayers, including her students, colleagues, and friends who she cared for. And that wreath that hangs on the front of this Capitol that lights up green every night is going to be lit in honor of Simone Parker and everyone else we've lost. So for Simone, for all those families out there, please continue to light your homes up green. Please continue to ring the bells at 10 a.m. every day. There are folks that are counting on us. Finally, our long-term care report: 121 new residents testing positive, 132 new staff members testing positive, 23 additional deaths attributable to individuals in long-term care. This is why they are first in the vaccination schedule, and we continue to work through that. We'll have an update on vaccinations tomorrow, and I hope that we have some bigger news later in the week on that. That's not final enough to report on today. All right, so with that, I know I moved fast, but a lot's going on in Frankfort and in our country today. So let's open it up to questions. I've got a number of them here. Let me first address a number of questions that we've received about security at the state capitol, with the FBI coming out and suggesting that there's chatter about attacks on any or all 50 state capitals, and another one for the U.S. Capitol. We will not allow that to happen. We will protect these buildings, these grounds, and everyone in them. And we are ready to do whatever necessary, Kentucky State Police and others, to ensure the safety of everyone here. Now, I'm not going to disclose our plans on how specifically we will do that, because we are not going to give those that would commit domestic terror a game plan that they can try to plan around. But if those individuals are listening, first, shame on you. My goodness, you're not a patriot, you're a thug and a terrorist. But we will not allow what happened at the U.S. Capitol to happen here. All right, Karen Czar from WUKY.
Good afternoon, Governor. Thank you. That was actually my first one, so I appreciate that. Two things. One, how quickly could House Bill 191 get through and funds be available to Kentuckians? And could we get your reaction to the petition for impeachment? Thank you so much.
House Bill 191 is so important. It takes funds that we have right now, one-time funds. The money is there and immediately would make it available to small businesses. $220 million in aid to businesses across Kentucky that have been harmed by this virus and are going to continue to see hardships in the coming months. $20 million to nonprofits that have struggled to keep their doors open. It provides $100 million to pay off part of the UI loan that legislators are for. This is something we should all be for. I believe a Harvard poll, and I think my numbers are close, found that 86% of Republicans nationwide and 94% of Democrats say this should be done. They're talking about the federal level, but this should be done. This is something that everybody's for. And if information about it not moving forward right now, which it hasn't yet, would reach those that are probably mainly focusing on what's happened in Washington, D.C., I think you would hear calls across party, across parts of the state, that this bill must be passed. We've had to take the steps we've taken during COVID, but it doesn't mean that businesses haven't suffered, and many businesses have suffered that aren't a part of any regulation at all. So this is a bill that needs to be done, and there's no reason that it shouldn't be done, and it should be done now. And if they would move on it, it could be made available immediately. If folks say that they have questions about it, this is a bill that they could change the way the money goes out too. So the power is in their hands to help people. They just need to be willing to do it. The impeachment petition has zero grounds. It cites actions the Kentucky Supreme Court said were lawful. I understand the speaker's position that the law requires they form a committee, but going anywhere on it would be trying to undo a valid election, mine from a year ago. It would be eerily similar to other things we're seeing across the country. We don't need it. Shouldn't go anywhere. Don't anticipate it'll go anywhere. I think that's one where everybody will rise above and put our democracy here in the state above four individuals who are upset. Shelby Smithson from WKYT.
Hi, Governor. With this spike that so many health leaders feared coming from the holidays happening, has there been any talk of new restrictions being put into place? And would they even really be effective, considering we're hearing many of these cases are really coming from those family gatherings at homes?
So we haven't had those discussions yet. We do believe that gatherings around the holiday, though they can happen in many different settings, have caused an increase. What we need to see is if that is a lasting increase that builds on itself, or as a bump from those one-time activities, and then people go back to doing the right things. Because if they got together over the holidays and that spread it. But since then, have been wearing a mask and not gathering with other people and being real careful. Then we could see this start to reduce and turn itself around. So that's what we'll be watching for. Stu Johnson from WEKU. All right, while we wait for Stu, I got a question here from Elizabeth Pace at Wave 3 about the doses that have not yet been administered. Those doses are still viable. They are waiting to be administered. The pace is picking up and none of them have been thrown out. We don't know about anything that has been expired. In fact, when you see people being able to be vaccinated earlier, like we did at Walgreens in Lexington and Louisville, it's because everybody knows that the number one rule is none of this should be wasted. Now, we shouldn't get to a position where we change priority, but everybody realizes that every single dose needs to be used, and that's what we are seeing. Let's go to Sarah Ladd at the Courier Journal, and I'll call on Stu near the end if he's still with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I had two, if that's okay. The first one is, if your executive orders were halted by the legislature, do you / does the state have a plan B for how to approach the pandemic and stop the spread of COVID-19? And then the second one, I know you were saying you couldn't really give details of the plans if there were protests, but could you at least say if the National Guard would be involved in that? Thanks so much.
So on the second question, again, I don't want those domestic terrorists that would plan attacks here in Kentucky or on this Capitol to know who and where those that would prevent them from doing it will be. And that's, again, I don't want to give those that would cause harm to our people any advantage whatsoever. The legislature, if their bills halt the current executive orders, remember, that will end assistance to police and firefighters on the workers' comp side when they have to quarantine from COVID. It will prevent schools from receiving dollars from those students who have to engage in remote learning for their own health. It'll cause a whole lot of problems above and beyond just the ones that will render us less safe, make more people exposed, and thus the risk of potential death to increase. But I'd just say that writing into law that a regulatory group in DC, where no one's elected, has the authority to set what the rules will be in Kentucky, be careful what you wish for, because those are health experts. They're not worried about the economic trade-offs. They're worried solely about that one piece. And I think that if pushed, the rules and regulations that they would put out for a specific area, they'd probably be highly effective on the virus, but they would likely cause more sacrifice than thus far Kentuckians have had to make. I believe that we strike the right balance. Obviously, our number one goal is to save lives, but as the governor of this Commonwealth, I'm responsible in watching the economy. I'm responsible for the other effects on people's mental and emotional health, and trying to balance it all the best I can. Have we been perfect? No. I doubt anyone who's ever faced a pandemic and something like this has been. But do I think we've done a better job than most? Yes. And you can look at our deaths per capita compared to anywhere else in the country, or where our unemployment rate is right now. Tom Latek from Kentucky Today.
Good afternoon, Governor. I've got two as well. I'll make them quick. The first one is, which of the bills the General Assembly passed over the weekend do you anticipate, or has passed so far, do you anticipate vetoing? And if they override, will you file lawsuits? And secondly, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell announced today that there's $200 million for COVID testing and vaccine distribution coming to Kentucky. How much will that help?
Well, so on that second piece, there is a lot of money coming for testing and for vaccine distribution. I think our numbers are a little different in the estimates that were given to us, but it's going to help a lot. It's going to help us keep these programs going, and we are grateful for those dollars. They are really important, both on the testing side, where otherwise we weren't going to have any dollars. And contact tracing, it supports as well. And then on the vaccine side, while looking back, the money should have come before the vaccines actually reached us. We can use it to help build out the infrastructure that we have to have in Kentucky. So it's not just important, it is necessary for our virus response. And I thank everybody in DC, including Senator McConnell, for helping to get that done. It doesn't have everything, that bill, that we need here in Kentucky, but it came at a time when it was absolutely necessary to have to move forward. And let me just add on that, while I do hear some in Frankfurt saying we shouldn't be spending federal dollars, et cetera, nothing in our budget, if we don't do, will return dollars to the federal government for their deficit. And every other state are going to spend the CARES Act dollars that come in. Why? Because it stimulates their economy, and we ought to do the same. Alex Akisto from the Lexington Herald Leader.
Hi, Governor. Thanks. I have two quick ones too. Some counties have already largely completed vaccinations for groups 1A. Some have used the surplus doses to dip into group 1B, but it's my understanding that your office is telling them not to order doses yet for 1B. For the counties that are finished with 1A, do you anticipate moving, the goal right now is to start 1B February 1st. Do you anticipate moving that up and giving counties permission to start sooner? Secondly, Michigan today banned the open carry of guns in its state capital. Do you think that similar steps should be taken in Kentucky?
So on counties that completely finish 1A, first of all, good job. Thank you for getting it out there. If you have any additional vaccine right now, you should be going ahead and giving it to 1B, get it in people's arms. It protects them. But what it also shows is that we've got to right size the amount of vaccine and where it goes. The first round out wasn't necessarily in correlation with population. And that's what we're doing right now. We got to try in basic equity and fairness to be getting enough vaccine out to enough places where theoretically they should be completing the groups at or about the same time. And that's going to take time to do. But by having clear priority groups, which we do, and by telling people 90% ought to get in people's arms within the first 7 days, we have given them, I think, some pretty clear instruction on how to do it. And you're going to see, because of the way that the vaccines are distributed, that some areas have already started 1B. Now, our goal is to beat the February 1st date statewide, and I do think we're going to do that. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm hoping later this week we'll have some announcements on how we can do 1B and 1C at the level that we need to. Second piece is right now, our capital is significantly restricted to visitation just in general. About any changes in the policies, that'd be a conversation to have with both the legislative and the judicial branch, because they are all under one roof here in the Capitol itself. Ryan Van Velzer from WFPL.
Thank you, Governor. So today you reported 21 new deaths. I'm curious, in what time frame did each of those deaths occur? And I don't mean specifically, but generally, I imagine that it didn't mean that all of those people died yesterday. What's the time frame in which you guys review the deaths and then report them out?
And online, you can find this when we do the report for each of them, and we've graphed out what it looks like if you do it by date of death and date we report, and the trend lines are about the same. But I'll just give you some examples, and you can pull from there. December 27th, December 26th, December 21st, 21st, 26th, 22nd. They are all in December, and with the exception of a couple of them, they're all from the second half of December. then this is part of the process that we try to go through to ensure that COVID is a factor in each of the deaths. But typically, at least a week will have passed from the date of death to the date of the reporting. I think that the most recent one here was December the 27th. Melissa Patrick, Kentucky Health News.
Hello, Governor. Just to go back to Tom's question a bit, regarding the General Assembly bills that pass, which ones do you plan to veto? And of those that are overridden, which ones do you think will end up in a lawsuit?
So we'll review the text of each bill that is submitted to the office. Certainly, any bill that I think will hamper our ability to effectively fight this virus, we will veto. Any bill that we believe unconstitutionally removes emergency powers that are absolutely necessary to fight a pandemic like this, we would challenge in court. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. And while that seems really dramatic when it's on the news, that's the way that branches of government are supposed to resolve their disagreements. The other bills, we'll have to see one by one. Certainly don't think the bill about Franklin Circuit Court is constitutional. I think the Chief Justice testified to that, and that's probably pretty telling. And then again, we'll review the other bills as they are. I do think that there is a major concern with the bill that prevents reorganization, and this is how it's reported, of boards and commissions. Okay, that's one piece, but it also prevents a governor from reorganizing his own cabinets. So if the legislature passes a bill that says state government should do X, I then have a duty to make sure that that's done, but I don't have the ability to move people or create an office to actually do it. And so can a legislature basically have veto authority over state government of saying, well, this is going to be office of general counsel for this cabinet, which we're going to move to that cabinet, or that the cabinet has the structure needed for the modern world. Can they so micromanage that structure that potentially prevents the governor from executing the laws that they pass? And would that mean that a bill passed by the General Assembly that provides a new task for a governor but doesn't provide the apparatus to do it, either number one, doesn't have to be enforced by the governor, or number two, would require the calling of a special session? Now, lawmaking is not an easy process, and that would probably suggest there'd be a special session after every single session. So I think that's one that we'll take a close look at, and the General Assembly ought to reconsider at least that part. I think we all need the tools to do the jobs that we are called upon to do. Carolina Busek from WLEX. Oh, we think she's dropped off. Kenny Bass from WCHS Charleston.
Thank you, Governor, for the opportunity. A couple of quick things. One, are you satisfied with Kentucky's progression on vaccine distribution? And if not, just because I'm very familiar with what's going on here in West Virginia, they say West Virginia is leading the nation in vaccine distribution. Any chance you've looked at what's going on over here and can maybe apply it to parts of Kentucky which would relate to the state?
We're watching what everybody is doing. I'm not satisfied at the pace, but it has picked up significantly. And so a lot of what we're looking at is the progress as we go, but also being very intentional about the structure that we're putting in place. Because right now it's doses that are specifically meant for really a specific individual that falls inside that category. So right now we want to pick up the pace, but the real test in importance is going to be when we hit the really large groups like 1C. Can we perform at that time? And that's what we're working on, and that's what we'll hit. But certainly looking at all best practices around the country, West Virginia's and others. Rachel, and I believe it's Rubin or Ruben, and if I mispronounce it, I apologize, from Politico.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Last week, Governor, you mentioned offering the National Guard to help with the long-term care federal pharmacy partnership. I was wondering if you had heard back about that request, and would that be actually administering the shots? And if there's anything else you are looking at, like community pharmacists, et cetera, to maybe increase the pace of vaccinations in that program.
So that program is not going as fast as I would like, but there is a schedule out there where it is still set, at least from what we see, to meet the goal of getting everyone in long-term care vaccinated by March the 1st. I need to get an update on our talks about specifically the National Guard helping there. We do have strike teams or assistance teams that are in our nursing homes right now. We certainly do have qualified individuals in the National Guard that could provide vaccination itself. Now, you got to be careful because oftentimes they're already a part of a hospital or other group that's doing it. Certainly, our independent pharmacies are amazing community partners, and we'll be looking for their help as we move forward. Perhaps not in this program, but especially at reaching harder to reach populations. So one thing that keeps me up isn't just the thinking big. And we got to get through long-term care. That's a big group. We got to be able to get through everybody over 70 and then 60. That's a big group. But what about the hard to reach groups in communities? Those with transportation challenges. We have Mennonite communities in Kentucky. Other areas where especially the local pharmacies and the local health departments, have real knowledge and real rapport. That's going to be a lot of the leadership that we need from communities. And that's going to be a big part, even though I call it think it small instead of think it big. That may be what determines whether we can reach that 85% that we need. If we end up with the high volume throughputs we need, that's going to get people that you could regularly reach, that have a smartphone, that can make the appointment, that have the car to get there. But that's not going to get us 85% of the population. So I think that there is a really important role for community pharmacies. I think there's a really important role for local health departments who are already doing so much. I think that's going to be the most valuable part of it. Okay, and then I've got, do we have Stu Johnson?
I'm here, Governor.
Great.
Can you hear me? Good.
I can.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming back to me. You've mentioned that officials from your administration have met with legislators during the interim to discuss the coronavirus restrictions. In hindsight, do you think if you had met more often with Senate and House leaders individually, specifically over the past 10 months, there would be less effort now to modify those executive branch authorities? And then secondly, would meeting with Republican leaders create a better chance to see what you want in a state budget going forward enacted?
Well, we did hold meetings with legislators before the budget to seek their input. And we are going to be meeting with them now that the budget process is going. On COVID, obviously we were working every day, all day in the midst of a crisis. And a phone works two ways. We granted I think every meeting that was requested from us. We did not provide stack in a room without somebody else from the administration, but that's just normal practice. We testified on COVID-related activities 40 times for over 30 hours, answering all the questions that were out there. I think if we look back honestly on that period, a lot of that was us showing up, ready to provide information, and then some fairly hostile attitudes or questions coming. So I'm not sure that it would have necessarily changed things. But in the midst of a pandemic, the concept that you don't call or meet with me enough, and therefore we're going to remove rules that are keeping people alive, I just don't think we ought to spend a lot of time talking about that, because we all ought to be able to put our egos aside and just do the right thing for our people during this period of time. All right. I know that was a lot today. We are going through a lot as a state and as a country. this domestic terrorist threat, we knew it had been out there at different times, but it has been so emboldened that it now takes all of us to say absolutely no more. I think this country is in a precarious place, and the true patriots, those who love their country and know that at times we're going to be disappointed and lose elections and laws are passed that we don't like, know that part about being a patriot is realizing that our democracy and our setup of government is more important than whether we feel happy or angry about what's been passed by it. So we need everybody's help. No more of this anger and of this hate that we see being spewed. No more accepting folks with zip ties that are saying, well, they might be needed. Well, we know what they're trying to do. Isn't it enough that we've had an attack on our U.S. Capitol, that we had a plot that the FBI was able to thankfully stop to kidnap and kill at least one governor out there, that we had people that stormed the grounds of the Washington governor's mansion and did something pretty similar here a while ago. Enough is enough. Hard stop, period. And again, anybody out there enabling, you cannot fan the flames and condemn the fire. Now, this is a time where we're going to see who truly loves this country. So please, let's be doing the right things for our country, for our fellow human being, by following these rules and regulations for preventing the spread of COVID. And let's get through this really dark time in our country. Listen, we've got the statue of Abraham Lincoln that sits here in this Capitol, who had to make tough decisions during a difficult time. They weren't popular, but he's viewed as one of the greatest leaders that we've ever had. That ought to be an example, not just to me, but to all of us, about standing up for what's right and against what's wrong, even when it seems difficult, and even when people are trying to bully and or intimidate you. I want to finalize today by saying Dr. Stack's my hero. What was done to his house is absolutely unacceptable, but the fact that he is not backing down, he cares so much about this Commonwealth, he's willing to go through something unimaginable when he took this job, is pretty special. We need you out there to show him the love that he deserves. We wouldn't be in a spot that is better than other states without him, and I could not have done this without him. I know Virginia agrees, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4.